In 3 years, a founder built a brand Apple couldn't afford to ignore. We are talking about Pay and a company called Nothing. But this is not a product review. This is a playbook that re-engineers how you build a brand, how you position it, and this is the critical part, how you engineer the exit. I'm Sophia White. This is the Alignment Lab. And the founder who wrote it did not start with a better product. In 2020, Pay launched a smartphone company out of London, not Shenzhen, not Silicon Valley, 13 years after the iPhone. The consensus was too late, too crowded, too delusional. A challenger smartphone brand in a category settled that even Microsoft failed. But he was not competing on spec, he was competing on positioning. And in 3 years, he took Nothing from 0 to 1.3 billion valuation, 1 billion in annual sales, and a community of co-creators that Apple's walled gardens has never seen. Here is how he did it and why this is the new founder playbook. Let's start by looking at what Pay learned at his last company. Before Nothing, he co-founded OnePlus, a brand that built a cult following through community hype. And then, at its peak, he walked away. The community felt abandoned. The trust evaporated overnight. This is a critical lesson. Community without continuity is a liability. Pay understood this, so when he built Nothing, he did something different. He embedded himself as the brand's face, not a logo. Not a press release, but a founder who showed up every single day. In 2025, Nothing opened its first retail store in Bengaluru, and Pay arrived in an auto rickshaw, no security, no entourage, a founder who understood that the arrival is the brand. He posted on Discord, he posted on X, he built a playground where his community could co-create with him. Now, a playground is not a marketing tactic, it is a positioning decision. It shows this brand is not behind a wall, this brand is being built with you. And here is the insight for founders watching this. Your personal brand is not a side project. It is your company's first proof of concept. Before anyone believes in your product, they have to believe in you. Pay understood that the founder is the first brand asset. He showed up, he built in public, he turned his identity into a moat. So what do you take from this? 2 things. 1. Pick one platform where your audience actually lives, not 5, not 3, and commit to showing up there every day for 90 days. Pay picked Discord and X. He did not dilute himself across Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and a newsletter. He picked depth over breadth. The founders who build the strongest brands are not the ones on every platform. They are the ones who are unmissable on one. 2. Every time you post about your product, post once about your process. The product tells people what you sell. The process tells people why they should trust you to sell it. That second post, the process post, is the one that builds founder authority. Pay did not just post about the Nothing phone. He posted the design decisions, the rejected prototypes, the thinking. That transparency is not content, it is credibility. But this is not just a story about a founder posting online. This is about a community. As a co-creation engine, Nothing has raised over 11.5 million from its own community, not venture capital, not institutional rounds, but thousands of individual backers who own a piece of the company. These are not customers, these are stakeholders. They test the products, they evangelize the brand, they shape the features. When Nothing launched Essential Space, its first AI software product, it was built on feedback from a community that had been part of the journey from day one. Now, compare this to Apple. Apple builds behind walls, total secrecy, staged reveals. Nothing builds in the open, it refines in public. This is the one product company. One is a product company, the other is a movement. And a movement is harder to compete with than a product because you can copy a feature. You cannot copy a co-created identity. Here is the structural insight. Pay is not building a phone company, he is building a brand that makes its audience feel like owners. And when your audience feels like owners, they do not switch. They do not churn. They defend. This is positioning architecture disguised as community building. Here is what you can implement this week. 1. Audit your audience. Are they customers or are they stakeholders? Customers buy and leave. Stakeholders stay and defend. The difference is whether they have skin in the game. Pay gave his community equity literally through Crowdcube. But you do not need to sell shares. Open your product roadmap, let them vote on features, let them name things, give them ownership of an outcome. Even if they do not own equity, when someone feels like they built it with you, they do not leave. 2. Create one feedback loop, a Discord channel, a WhatsApp group, a Notion board, one place where your community can shape what you build and watch their input become real. When they see their idea ship, they stop being customers and start being evangelists. The feedback loop is the conversation mechanism. It turns passive consumers into active builders. Now, let's talk about how Pay introduced his brand into culture, because he did not buy billboards. He did not run Super Bowl ads. He gave the product to people with a microphone. YouTubers, designers, tastemakers. The transparent hardware was not just an aesthetic choice, it was the content. Every unboxing became free advertising because the product itself was remarkable enough to photograph. The glymph interface is not a feature, it's a signal. It says, I chose design over specs. That is a positioning decision, not a product decision. Before, Nothing made a single product. Pay and his team created a design book, a visual manifesto. It mapped out the next 5 years of the brand's aesthetics before there was anything to sell. This is the opposite of how most founders build. Most founders build the product first and then ask, what should our brand look like? Pay built the brand first and then asked, what products belong inside this world? 10% of Nothing's customers work in creative fields. He's explicitly targeting the audience Apple abandoned when it became a luxury utility. And earlier this year, he hired Charlie Smith, the former chief marketing officer of Loewe, the luxury fashion house, as Nothing's chief brand officer. A tech company hiring a luxury brand executive? This is not random. This is a founder who understands that design is not decoration. Design is the competitive advantage when the product category is mature. 2 actions. 1. Before you build your next product, build a design manifesto. 1 page, define your visual language, typography, colour, material, ethos for the next 3 years. Not a brand guideline, a manifesto. Pay's team created theirs before the first product shipped. Most founders do this backwards. They build the product and then ask a designer to make it look good. The manifesto forces you to decide what your brand stands for visually before there is anything to look at. 2. Get your product into the hands of 3 people with a microphone. Before you spend a single dollar or pound on ads, not influencers with the biggest audience, the ones with the most trust. Pay seeded nothing products to YouTubers and designers whose audiences are small but fanatical. 1 authentic unboxing from the right person outperforms 100 billboards. Trust is the currency. Distribution without trust is noise. And this brings us to the thesis. In 2025, Nothing closed a $200 million funding round led by Tiger Global, the same firm that backed Facebook before its IPO. Qualcomm Ventures joined as strategic investor. The company was valued at $1.3 billion. Revenues hit $562 million in 2024 and are on track to surpass $1 billion this year. That is 146% year-on-year growth in India, its largest market, the fastest growing smartphone brand in the country for 6 consecutive quarters. It has shipped 5.1 million smartphones and 7 million products in total. The average Nothing customer is 26 years old. This is the demographic Apple is losing, the generation that does not have the same brand loyalty their parents did. As Pay himself put it, for the youth, Apple feels more like Microsoft when I was younger, like this big corporation. He is building the brand for the audience Apple is aging out of. Now, a brand architecture observation here. Nothing is currently developing its own operating system. It has hired AI leadership. It has a design language so distinctive that the products are instantly recognizable, even from across the room. It has built a creative community that sees itself as a stakeholder, not consumer. And it has done all of this in a category so capital intensive that most challengers never make it past year 2. What does Apple do when there is a brand in its own space that cannot be replicated? When the design is too distinctive to copy, when the community is too embedded to poach, when the founder has built what Steve Jobs built, a cult of personality wrapped around a design psychology. But for a generation, Apple no longer speaks to, it buys it. Carl Pei did not build a phone company. He built a brand demonstration. And every move the community runs, the design book, the fashion CMO, the AI first roadmap is designed to make Nothing unignorable. The acquisition does not need to happen next quarter. The brand architecture is already in place. The question is not whether Apple is watching. The question is, how long will they wait? What do you take from this pillar? 1. Every strategic partnership, every hire, every funding round should make your brand harder to ignore, not just bigger. When Pei hired a luxury fashion CMO, He was not filling a role, he was sending a signal to the market about what nothing competes on. Before your next hire or partnership, ask, does this make my brand harder for the incumbent to dismiss? If the answer is no, it is not a strategic move, it is a headcount. Strategic moves change the shape of the market. Headcount fills a seat. 2. Build your company as an acquisition thesis from day one. Even if you plan to run it for 50 years, what is the single thing about your brand that a bigger company cannot build themselves? That is your exit architecture. For Pay, it was design distinctiveness, plus a co-created community. For you, it might be proprietary framework, a distribution channel no one else owns, or a trust relationship in a market the incumbent has lost. Identify that asset, protect it, build everything around it. The brand decision that made nothing impossible to ignore was not a product choice. It was a positioning choice. Pay decided before he had a factory, before he had a supply chain, that this brand would be defined by design, built in public with a community, and led by a founder who refused to be invisible. That is a positioning architecture, and it is the new founder playbook. Carl Pay's playbook is not about phones. It is about building a brand so culturally embedded, so design distinctive that the incumbent cannot compete with you. They can only acquire you. That is not luck. That is positioning discipline. And it is a discipline that most founders ignore until it is too late. My question to you, is Carl Pay building a company to last or a brand to sell? Drop a comment below. If you enjoy these breakdowns, you probably like my newsletter, Clarity Memo. Each issue explains one strategic insight behind positioning, alignment and authority. You can subscribe below. Until next time, I'm Sophia White. This is the Alignment Lab.